Hey guys, how's it going? Jasensational here, and today I have a deck guide for you guys on the deck Zoe Vi. It's also known as the Rubin pile or the Rubin Zoo. It features two champions, Zoe Vi and a PNZ Targon shell that aims to just outvalue your opponent, and I think has some pretty cool lines. So I'm glad to show you guys how to play this deck and how to think about all its different cards and different choices that you can make. Without further ado, let's just jump right into the deck list. When we're looking at this deck, this truly is the epitome of what it means to be a Targon pile. When you're looking at this deck, a lot of cards just seem very weak and small on their own. We're curving out on 13 2-drops. We don't have any cards that cost more than 5 in this deck. And when you just look at this deck individually, even in their mulligan, when you see just like a bunch of different cards in your hand, sometimes these cards just don't really make sense, or it just doesn't feel like these cards make sense. But further on, I'm going to show you just what each different card kind of does in this deck, but just on a very basic level, we are playing a Targon invoke deck that aims to just outvalue your opponent through just your invokes, and your card draw, and then also include the PNZ shell to have just a bunch of removal cards with likes of Thermo Beam, Mystic Shot, Get Excited, things like that. We are playing two iterative improvements along with Ballistic Bot to not only generate more fodder for our Spacey Sketchers, but also have the iterative improvement to copy like a big Celestial unit or like a Sisters, for example, that can just help us snowball our value advantage forward. Of course, as a Targon deck, we are running 3 copies of Hush, 3 copies of Star Shaping as an alternative win condition for the deck. So let's talk a little bit about how you want to set up your early game as well as kind of transition into your late game. Whenever you're playing this deck, it's always important to think about how you can just be generating more value than your opponent while also stabilizing the board so you don't fall too far behind. In the early game, you're going to find yourself relying heavily on Spacey Sketcher as a card to just give you the answers for the right situation. If you need a challenger to challenge a unit off, you have the Serpent, or you get a unit to block with like the Spacey or with the Charger, for example. Or you just find like the quick Equinox to silence like a Death Rattle, or sorry, Last Breath, or just like an Overwhelm unit, or just have like Crescent Strike to stall out the game plan. And then you transition in more of a late game where you start to really get your big hitter Celestial cards to just outvalue your opponent. You have the Solari Priestess that can find you cards like the Traveler for even more invokes, or just have the big hitting cards like the Comet just as spot removal, and of course Star Shaping as your big elusive win condition, great beyond Immortal Fires or even like the Overwhelm options. But you want to focus on getting down your engines such as Ballistic Bot and Mountain Goat early on, so that you can have cards like the Gem, the Ignition, that will feed your Spacey Sketcher, they'll feed your Get Excited, because like many other decks running similar cards, you don't want to be discarding any of your real cards in your deck. You don't want to be discarding like a Mystic Shot if you don't have to, things like that. So you want to make sure that you have cards that give you gems, that give you ignitions for your early game. Otherwise, you might get stuck with a bunch of Spacey Sketchers in hand and kind of be put in an awkward position where sometimes you're not doing anything, but you don't want to be discarding any of your real cards either. So on your mulligan, make sure that you're finding your cards like Mountain Goat and Ballistic Bot to pair with your Spacey Sketchers. Otherwise, you're just playing your tools such as like the Mystic Shots and the Get Exciteds as just a removal option to kind of supplement this target invoke package. So a quick cheat sheet for you guys for picking out which Celestial you want off your Spacey Sketcher, because this is probably one of the most difficult decisions that you'll have to be making in your early games. And so I just have a quick table for you guys on the pick frequency. As you look from left to right, you'll see which cards I tend to pick more often than the other ones. And of course, it's split between the 7 under 3 mana cost Celestials, and it's split between units and spells. Now for units, I think the pick frequency of these is usually Messenger most common, Serpent second most common, Trickster third most common, followed by Charger. For spells, that's going to be Equinox as most common, Crescent Strike as second most common, and then Moonglow as third most common. So aside from the units, Messenger is just this very versatile tool. It fulfills our game plan as a value tool, being able to draw one card, also just providing a 2-mana 2/2 stat line, just to stall out the early game and move us forward to our late game to draw into our removal, draw into our champions, is very essential. Serpent is probably also one of the most versatile tools. It's just a 0-mana card, which is really good. Not only is it 0 mana, it's also a 2/1 with Challenger, so it can act as a very good removal tool in the early game to pick off like a 3/2, to pick off like an Azirelia, for example, or at least threaten it. Is very powerful. On the other hand, it can also just be used defensively in a pinch, just to serve as a 2/1 blocker that might just be blocking down an aggressive aggro board early on, and to stall out a little bit more. One card that I think I've underestimated how often I'll actually pick this card is the Trickster. A 3-mana 3/3 elusive is just very threatening against a lot of decks. Decks like Thresh Nas, decks like Turbo Thralls have a really tough time dealing or blocking with this elusive damage. And if you can just chip in 3 damage or 6 damage with 2 Tricksters, or even 7 with an iterative improvement, you can just start to really apply a lot of pressure to your enemy's life total, and we have a little bit of burn in our deck to kind of go over the top. Now, Charger is one of the more awkward ones. Its stat line is a little bit weak, having 1 health, being able to remove relatively easily, and if you're picking Charger, you're not picking any of the better options. But Charger in a pinch can serve as a good fearsome blocker for very cheap, so as a 4/1 stat line against an Elise, against like an Arachnoid's Horror, things like that, it's just very good to kind of just set up an awkward blocker in the way that cards like Serpent doesn't do, because it only has 2 attack. But what Charger excels at is it has 4 attack and has Overwhelm. So if you're gonna put this down when your opponent taps out, or you're trying to set up for a really aggressive open attack, then this card can come in handy. Moving on to the spells, we have Equinox as the most commonly picked card, and I think this is a little bit obvious. Equinox in itself is very good at silencing key units forever, which is super strong. Cards like Voice of the Risen, the Ship for Swain, Leviathan, or just removing Overwhelm or elusive keywords off of any unit is just very powerful. Imagine removing Overwhelm off of an 8/8 that had Overwhelm, so think of like Captain Farron or the Thralls. Just being able to remove the Overwhelm off of it, and then just being able to chump block it with all of our cheap units, like any of our cheap Celestials or Spacey Sketchers, just removes the threat of that Overwhelm unit altogether. Next up, we have Crescent Strike. Crescent Strike is a lot more situational. It's very good at punishing development, and can often or not force your opponents into open attacking as soon as you invoke it. So if your opponent plays out 1 unit on their turn, and then you cast Star Chart, or you play Spacey Sketcher, and then it goes back to your opponent's initiative, now they have to think that you could have grabbed Crescent Strike, and so they have to attack into it. This also works on the flip side when you take it on your defensive turn, and now your opponent has to think whether or not they want to open attack or try to develop and just go wider than Crescent Strike does. But this card is very good at stopping aggression in the mid games, and it can often just lead your opponent into having some bad attacks. Lastly, Moonglow is probably the most niche Celestial card out of this 7-card pool. It's because it simply just doesn't do as much as all the other cards. I think there are going to be some very niche cases where you can grab Moonglow when your opponent has tapped under the ability to, say, kill your Zoe, for example, and you can cast this on your Zoe and threaten the Zoe level up, because again, some decks, they just have an awkward time dealing with it. And if you can get this off and then level Zoe because you have the spell shield as well as the 2 health, that is a big deal. But unfortunately, currently, a lot of decks can actually just kill your Zoe or kill whatever it's being targeted before it actually goes off, and this just becomes a dud in that scenario. Lastly, one of the key things to not underestimate about this deck is just how much burn and reach we have. We're running 3 copies of Mystic Shot as well as Get Excited, and of course we have the Ballistic bot that's generating ignitions every turn. in some matchups, it's not uncommon to just have 9, 10, or 8 to 10 damage worth of burn in hand, just sitting there ready to just chuck at your opponent's Nexus, if as well as, you know, you're just getting ready to chip them down turn by turn. Sometimes you go really wide early on with a lot of cheap Celestial units, you lower your opponent's health total down to a good enough point, and then just start chucking Mystic shots at their face. Because a lot of decks right now just don't have that as a burn, or just don't have heal options to kind of heal out of it. And even so, your removals or your burn spells are so efficient compared to most heal cards in the game that you're often just at an advantage if you get your opponent to that point. But when this is kind of a matchup dependent thing where, you know, their deck doesn't have any heal cards, and then you start thinking about how you want to use your cards, whether you want to use them as removal options or save them as burn options is completely dependent. Obviously, you want to keep yourself alive first, so you should use these as removal, but once you get to a certain stabilization point, you should start massing these up and considering how much burn and reach you have as an option. So finally, let's talk a little bit about matchup tables and where Zoe Vi is currently. I think where Zoe Vi is just slightly unfavored, but, you know, holds a good chance into our Azirelia Azir as well as Draven. Zoe Vi has pretty good game against Azirelia Azir because we have, you know, a lot of removal options from P and Z. We have the snakes for the challengers, and sometimes we can just high roll our start and just out aggressive our opponent and have the reach above, right? Similar with Draven, they don't have healing cards. We have healing cards, and we also have burn. And so if we can just get the pressure early on onto Draven and lower the health total so that we can kind of sneak in with elusive damage or just the burn over the top, that can be very effective into just beating that deck. However, our deck is susceptible to just huge tempo swings from cards like Tri-Beam, for example, and in that case, it's definitely kind of fighting from a back foot. But our deck should outvalue their deck, we should out-heal their deck, and we should have the burn over the top for them to not be able to come back from. Where Zoe Vi is usually good in, and where it's usually what people are playing it for against, is against Thresh Nas as well as some other aggro decks in the meta. Because we have 3 hushes, because we have the removal tools, we can invoke the comets, we have Vi, which lines up really good in the Thresh. Thresh Nas is often a pretty good matchup for us, but unfortunately some of our early units don't trade well into their units, and if we don't draw our Vi, if we don't draw our Hush, then we really don't have good answers for their Thresh or their Nasus, and so a very draw dependent matchup, but overall should be favored. And of course, we have the aggro piles. You know, this could be like Shurima Burn, this could be like discard aggro, where we usually just have a lot of answers for the units. We have the removal, we have the silences for any big overwhelm units, and of course we have the star shaping healing options to heal us out of range of any burn. And so against a lot of aggro decks, this is a very, very safe pick to bring, and is likely going to be one of the better decks against those decks. With that said in mind, I have 3 cool games to showcase for you guys. They are against Azirelia Azir, Draven Ez, and Thresh Nas. So different matches to showcase different elements of this deck. I am playing on my friend's account, so this is some diamond gameplay that I have. But I think while I was just recording for this video, I went like 17-6 or something like that with this deck in D3 all the way up to D1, so definitely a very, very strong deck in this meta, or just a very strong deck overall, as long as you know how to pilot it. Hopefully this deck guide has helped give you a better idea of how you play, and by watching these videos you should also know a little bit more about each individual matchup as a whole. If you enjoy this content, I would appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, if you hit the like button, if you leave a comment down below telling me what you enjoyed and what you learned. I would appreciate that very, very much. And with that said, let's get right into the games. Alright, so we are up against Azirelia Azir here. I think Mountain Goat, and mainly Mountain Goat, is very, very important in this matchup, simply because we can generate a lot of gems. So if they attack with a sand soldier, we can block with the mountain goat to get a free block, and that not only gives us a gem for our spacey sketcher, we can heal our goat to block again, or paired with ballistic bot, this can apply a lot of really early on pressure. And so particularly in this matchup, I'm really looking for goat. And because I had goat, I'm pretty happy keeping a card like Spacey Sketcher. And this bot just kind of serves along with the same game plan. One of the cool things about Ballistic Bot is that the augment keyword actually buffs the Ballistic Bot when you play a gem or when you play any card that you get off of Spacey Sketcher. And so this is just a really good way to apply a lot of pressure onto the opponent really quickly. Opponent's taking his lovely time thinking about whether or not he wants to play a 1-drop. Looks like he doesn't have it. And followed by Deus, which is a really slow start, good for us, meaning that he didn't have the 1-drop, so he doesn't generate the sand soldier attacking this turn with the Deus. And, he hasn't played any unit up to turn 3, which is a good sign for us. Vi here is a really good draw. In this matchup, you are looking for Vi because Vi is the best tool for you to remove your opponent's Azir. If you don't draw Vi and they draw Azir, it's going to be a very uphill grind for the Zoe Vi player. Of course, they could run cards like Recall and Retreats, Homecomings to save their Azir, but a card like Vi is just so necessary in kind of stopping that aggression. So, hitting the Spacey Sketcher here, I see Serpent, I see Crescent, I see Messenger. I pick Serpent here because it's a good threat against a potential elusive that they want to play. And I think that it's important to know when you want to take Messenger for value. In my hand, I'm playing Vi on turn 5. I have a Get Excited to kind of stall me through some of these earlier turns. And the only realistic time I would play Messenger would either be next turn or on turn 6, and I think at this point it's just I don't think I need it. I have the Guiding Touch if I really want to draw myself a card, but in this case Serpent is just a little bit more versatile. The second Spacey Sketcher off the top is pretty good. These cards don't really do anything. Crescent Strike is okay, but I'm not gonna cast it this turn. I'm gonna cast in like 2 turns, and I don't think I'm thinking that far ahead. And I also want you guys to notice on what my opponent is doing. He's kind of taking this very slow. He set up a 2 Deus on board with Aurelia. I think he saw the fact that I was just a Targon deck and thought that he could take this really slow line and try to get a lot of value out of me. And he's getting kind of punished because I have the really good start. I have 2 2-drops with 2 Spacey Sketchers, and this has allowed me to mass just a really big board. And what this gem also does from this block is just I get 2 damage out of each gem I play. I have the Serpent, I have the Trickster, and I'm just ready to push a lot of damage at my opponent. There's not much my opponent can do at his current mana point. He gets his attack here, and I just get another free gem. If he wants to like Shapestone one of these, I have to Get Excited, but he has neither, and I'm just in a really far ahead position. I have another gem for me on the open attack. I'm playing the Trickster here, which buffs my Ballistic Bot by 1 more, and it just threatens 3 more health. And now here, taking Serpent earlier, I can challenge the Aurelia while also just dealing a lot of damage, and this is putting my opponent in a very tough spot. Putting my opponent down to 4, I gem to just increase my damage by 2 more, putting him down to 2. I now have the Ignition and the Get Excited lethal. If he wants to save Azirelia with like a Homecoming, for example, I want to save mana up for this Get Excited, which is the main reason why I didn't play Vi this round. And so he's down to 2 health. I have so much reach in my deck. He drops a 3rd Deus, and I have him on a 2-turn with this Ignition bot. And of course I have the Get Excited this turn if he taps under 2 mana for the Nopify. It looks like he's not doing that just yet, but I don't really see a reason to fire this off. I have the Ignition lethal next round, and this is kind of just forcing him to stay above 2 health. We're not really in a threat of dying either, but we don't need our board anymore because we have the 1 damage that we need to kill him in hand. And, you know, I can just take this patiently, wait till next turn, or just fire it off now, and you can kind of see from there. And there you go. Taps under 2 mana, lets us get excited this round, and we have lethal. Being able to push that early damage, getting the double 2 drops with the goat to generate us the gem, which is very crucial for our double spacey schedule draw, has allowed us to apply a lot of pressure early on and threaten him with some burn. I did Sketcher here because I have to get excited. I already need fodder, and I don't have the fodder generation in my hand yet. If he plays bot, we play goat. If he passes, we also play goat. The only way he kills this is like the Calling Striker Thermo, and that's his whole turn. It's gonna flock it. Okay. Because we have the ballistic bots, we'll just try to focus on burning him down, because our deck has the heals, and his deck does not. This allows me to play Vi, but Vi doesn't really do anything, and then just gets flocked. So we can at least play Vi this turn, and just like kill the spider, I guess. And then when he attacks and tries to flock afterwards, I have the Guiding Touch. So the important part here is just not to let him flock my Vi. And I can block like the 3-2 next turn, and then he can't flock me through his Guiding. Unless he has like another spell, right? But that's kind of like the risk we accept. And if he goes for something on stack, we have like the answers. So it comes down to if he has another Mystic Shot. Nice, that's huge. We also get to kill his bot for free too without damaging our unit. By the mana for Moonglow. It's just Equinox for a Baron. We have a decent amount of burn in hand, but that's not going to get us there just yet. Can't play Zoe. Damn, this is not a good spot. Depends on what his last cards are. Playing this into like a static is a little bit suspicious. Nice. Unplayable cards. Interesting what they could be. Star Shaping is exactly what we wanted. We can kill this Farron with something later. Okay. I will start shaping my face now that my Vi can't die to a Scorched. Great. Beyond... It's actually just Mortal Fire, right? This deck can't deal with the Mortal Fire. You'd have to draw into exactly Scorched Earth. I guess that's annoying. And the Scorched. Damn, dude. Damn. Alright, well, good news is this Immortal Fire can block here. Bad news is we lost out on 5 damage. He got rid of his Decimates too. It's kind of interesting. Got excited on that. Messenger for card draw. Iterative. We can iterative his Farron or our Phoenix. I need to figure out which one I'm iterativing. I think at this point just settled on iterativing the Phoenix. Okay. Makes me want to reconsider iterating the Farron there, but this should also get me there with that Vi pickup. We don't know what they're up against. If he blocks Zoe, we also just get excited at it. No sweat. We should let this through first. We don't even have to get excited. He only has one spell. Or one card, rather. This has 2 lives, so I can block here. Yep. So, even if he has another Thermo Beam, he dies to Vi. Alright, let's see how cracked he is. Nice. The reason we won that game was because he simply did not have a big Tri-Beam. He cast his Tri-Beam for like 3, and we were able to do that because we kind of put in a lot of pressure early on. So we're looking for our Vi, and we're looking for some early drops. Because he's on attack on 3, makes me want to keep these 2 cards a little bit less because of the threat of Merciless Hunter onto the Ballistic bot. We can give it a try. He full mulls. We might want to like mull a little bit more aggressively for like Vi. But that's a good card. This stops the Hunter. Nice. So no 2-drop from him, which is nice. He has a really slow start. Even if he has Hunter here, I have to get excited. Lets him glimpse, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's fine. Can't stop every slay. Nice, no glimpse either. So we'll see if he has the Black Spear. No Black Spear, jeez. Well, I really like the position I'm in then. So what am I scared of? I don't get a much better attack by developing, and I can see what I want afterwards. So, probably a very champion heavy hand. We're just gonna make use of our mana here. I'm expecting like a Thresh to come down. I see. There's the Thresh. I'm just gonna Thermo Thresh here. I Ignition first so that he can't value trade me. Unless he pulls with the Thresh. Yep. As expected. So we want a 3 mana Thermo onto the Thresh, which allows us to play Goat. Whoa. We could Pale onto here as well, like Pale into Thermo. Like we can Pale Goat Thermo, and that's gonna be really strong. If this baits out the Vile Feast, that's his Vile for Zoe. Actually, well, we need just Thermo here then. Yeah. The issue is we have no answer for Gnosis. We just hope that we can go under the radar. That is not it. So it's just really down to if he has Gnosis here or not. He is not. I think I've had the read that he doesn't have Black Spear yet. Just gonna never tap under Mystic Shot. That's the most important part, just making sure that he can't feel like he can take like that Glimpse or that Rite of Calling. And we know that we don't have the Glimpse, and that's just the power of that information. There's no point giving him Slays here. Probably could just play Trickster there, given that his hand was kind of bricked. And we wouldn't be tapping under anything important either. Just gonna kill him in 2 turns with elusives. We have the Hush, so we're no longer scared of Gnosis. It's a 5/5. There's no point tapping under. Worst case scenario, he just like bonks this 5/5. But again, I have the read that he didn't have more than... If he had Gnosis, he probably would have played it earlier. And very desperate attack. Actually, block like this. I don't want to put damage onto my Submersible, so that dies to Black Spear. And my Zoe's a threat just by leveling up. Ooh, that's a punish. Slight punish there, but I have the elusive lethal. We just find another Trickster. Not quite. We'll probably play Vi so that we have access to Vi's Vault Breaker, and that can just help us push extra damage. I suspect that this game should be over. Yep, easy game.